Welcome to the Arts at ODU Summer Series. I'm Colin Strawn, Executive Director for the Arts at Old Dominion University. The Summer Series was developed to facilitate community connections through free and accessible programming, to highlight the strength and resilience of the arts, and to lift spirits during this challenging time. The ODU community submitted proposals for programs, and this afternoon we continue the series by featuring a program entitled Voices Across Borders. Peter Schulman, Professor of French and International Studies at ODU, converses with Canadian author Mélanie Loisel on keeping memories alive across generations and on a fight for justice and truth on a reservation in Northern Québec. Thank you, Peter and Mélanie.
Thank you so much, Arts at ODU and the Office of Community Engagement. We are expecting a great series continuing throughout the summer to provide resiliency in these times of stress. And thank you so much also for ODU for letting me share Mélanie Loisel, whose effervescence will help us during this heat wave. For those of you who don't know her, she's a former Radio Canada reporter. She was named Canada's Woman of Distinction in 2018 and is the author of three amazing books that she wrote in 3 years. My Shared Life by Martin Gray, They Lived the Century, From the Shoah to Syria, and her latest book, Marly Fontaine, My Reservation, My Flesh. So we're really grateful to Mélanie. And there'll be a Q&A afterwards, and you're welcome to submit questions throughout the program. But the first question I will ask to Mélanie, who crisscrossed the globe with her amazing book on the century, gathering all these testimonials and witnesses throughout, from 1939 to 2000, throughout the world. Where do you come from? Where are your roots?
First of all, thank you very much, Dr. Schulman. I'm very grateful for this invitation, and I'm glad to be with you this afternoon. So let's start at the beginning. Well, I'm born in FERMONT. It's a mining town in northeastern of Canada, near the Quebec-Labrador border. And this town is notable for its windscreen called the Wall. We can see it on the screen. So I grew up in this wall that is like a long shopping center, just to give you an idea of around 1 kilometer containing everything inside. The school, the hospital, the city hall, the stores, the arena, the pool, so everything is in this store. And the structure was designed to block the northern wind during the long winter. When it's too cold, it's possible to stay inside for many days if you want. But believe me, it's impossible to stay inside because the landscapes are so beautiful. Of course, the nature is rude, but you have a unique moment when you're going out, when you live in the north. And what I like to be outside, it was really to walk on the lakes to the top of the mountains. On the top of the mountains, I wonder always what was behind the wall. For me, when I was a child, it was difficult to figure or to imagine the world over the wall. I couldn't imagine another life. And that is probably why I like to travel so much right now. And in the same time, it's a bit of paradox, but this word inspired me so much.
I remember reading a description you wrote of a spruce tree, l'épinette, which was so powerful, I thought, and inspiring. And that's what led me to discover your other works. And perhaps you could read that paragraph, which I translated, but you could read it in French, perhaps.
Well, this fruit is really the tree of my childhood. It was really, it was beside my house. So I saw this tree every day of my life. Well, j'étais et je suis encore fascinée par ce petit arbre frêle, souvent dénudé, qui demeure toujours droit et fier. Rien ne peut le faire fléchir, pas même le feu, le froid ou le vent. Il a une incroyable capacité à résister aux intempéries, à conserver sa cime, à garder la tête haute. Je me plais souvent à dire que l'être humain est comme une épinette. Quand les bourrasques détruisent tout sur leur passage, que les bombes s'abattent sur les populations civiles, que la folie humaine pousse l'humanité vers l'abîme, il y a toujours des hommes et des femmes de courage qui se tiennent debout devant l'adversité. La vie leur a parfois infligé les pires sévices, arraché ce qu'ils avaient de plus précieux. Ils refusent néanmoins de courber l'échine au nom de leur dignité et de leur fierté.
Thank you. It's very musical when you read it, and it's so organic. I was wondering how you came across this idea, how we were inspired to write this book that breaks all these boundaries and led you to go all around the world chasing after witnesses and testimonials of the century.
We have to go back in 2013. At that time, I was a freelance reporter. I traveled in many countries. And on my way, I met a lot of elders and they told me amazing stories. And for me, it was important to collect their memories because those stories would have been lost if nothing had been done. So what I've decided to do is really to start a new project and to say, well, I'm going to collect and to gather stories of those witnesses of the world. And what I've decided to do is really to be in contact with them. And how I choose them, I chose the witnesses of the most important historic event from World War II to Syria, passing by a lot of historic events like Vietnam War, Pinochet dictatorship, Cambodia genocide, 9/11, Haiti earthquake. And to be in contact, my strategy was easy. I wrote a simple letter to introduce myself. And I say in the letter, well, I'm Mélanie, I'm a young Canadian journalist. I would like to meet you, and I'm going to ask you only 3 questions. What lessons have you learned from your experience? What are the world's biggest challenges? What message would you like to deliver to the younger generation? My main objective was really to learn, as we said, from the past in order to build a better future for the next generation. So I sent the letters to very important people to attract media and public attention, like former presidents, activists, union leaders, survivors. Few days later, I've been really surprised, but I received a lot of positive answers. And in the letters, it was, "Hi, Mélanie, what a wonderful idea. You're welcome in Paris. You're welcome in Sweden. You're welcome in Lebanon." And I was in my small apartment in Montreal. I was single. I lost my job, and I really didn't know what to do. So well, what I decided to use my own savings, and I bought the flight ticket to Paris. On my way, believe me, I read a lot of books about those witnesses. I prepared a research file for each of them. I booked the interview. My agenda was so full. And for many months, I worked on this project. I visited, let's say, 12 of countries, and after 2 years, it's been possible to interview 62 witnesses of the last century.
It's a dizzying ride throughout the world, and I devoured it in a few days, your book. And each person is like an incredible, extraordinary person. But I was wondering if you had any of them you were more attached to than others who left an indelible mark on you.
Well, it's always a tricky question when you have interviewed more than 60 witnesses and you have on your list the friend of, the lawyers of Mandela and Martin Luther King, the grandson of Gandhi, the the translator of Mao Zedong, the former president of Iran and friend of Khomeini. You can imagine that those interviews were very important. But also I had on my list, just to give you an idea, the former president of Israel and one of the Palestinian leaders, close friend of Yasser Arafat. And it's difficult because some interviews were very emotional, others were they were really challenging, intellectually challenging, or very different or innovative, or so that's why it's difficult to answer to this question. But if I have to name only one, I will say the interview with Kim Phuc, known as the Napalm girl. I made a lot of requests to get this interview over 2 years. It's been really difficult to be in contact with her. But at the end, when finally I meet her, our first meeting was so true. We had a connection. And after I visited Kim Phuc many times, close to Toronto, she lives there now. And for me, it was really important to meet her because her photo was not only for me the photo of the century, but this photo represents also all children, just innocent civilians can be affected by conflict. And also, I just want to note that Kim Phuc, she signed the preface of my book.
That's one of the byproducts of doing such a book, is that you make friendships, you create links, and we at ODU are familiar with Kim Phuc also because she spoke here as the Wallenberg lecturer at one point, which was an incredibly moving experience as well.
Really interesting.
Your other two books too are highly charged and amazing, focused on individuals. Perhaps you could talk about Martin Gray and the experience of interviewing a Holocaust survivor throughout the whole book.
Mm-hmm. Martin Gray is well known for his book For Those I Love, written by Max Gallo, is a French historian. And this book has been sold across the world and more than 30 million copies. So this author is very famous, and Martin Gray was also one of the first that I interviewed. His story is really dramatic because during the Holocaust, he lost his entire family in the concentration camps, and he lost also his second family in the 70s. His wife and his 4 children. After those tragedies, I can say Gray told me that he thought to kill himself, but he chose to live, and he began to write a lot of books about resilience. He gave hope and courage to millions of readers. And we can say it was one of the first now motivational speaker. But before to start to write all the story of everybody, my publisher asked me to write firstly one book. And for me, it was obvious that it would be the story of Gray. Gray gave me his last interview, and for 3 months, we worked together very closely. He called me in Montreal every day, and when I say every day, it was every day, many times a day. And at the end, we published My Life in Share, and for me, it's my legacy and also the legacy of Martin Gray.
Yes, it's an incredible book, and you're right. Resiliency is one of the most potent themes, which we see in your last book too, Marly Fontaine. And perhaps you could tell us about that and how that came about.
Well, after the release of They Lived a Century, my biggest book, and after interviewing of a lot of elders, I wanted to give voice to the youth, because most of the people told me that it was my turn to be committed in my community, in my country. And when I came back in Canada, I thought about it and I realized that I didn't know a lot about my own country, about the most important conflict in Canada. You know, the last decades, thousands of women disappeared and were murdered in Canada. And those women never had a chance to tell their stories. So for me, it was obvious that it was time to give voice to the young Indigenous women, because they can tell their own story, and it's important to hear their voice. And Marly was one of them with a difficult and poignant story. But I chose her because Marly got tattooed on her, she got a tattoo on her arm, and the number is her reservation number, Indian reservation number. And the first time that I saw this, I was really shocked, because for the Holocaust survivor, it's been so difficult to have this mark. And why this girl have decided to mark herself. So for me, it was a big statement. And I was sure that behind the statement, they had a story. And I decided to call Marly and ask her, would you like to tell me your story, to tell your story to everybody?
Yeah, it's an amazing book. It gives me goosebumps when I read it. And my last question is that you crossed so many, not only so many borders with your interviews and your books, but also you crossed so many time barriers. You started in 1939 and your last book is contemporary. And I was wondering, if you were to crystallize all these experiences for the new generations, what is your message? What kind of message do you bring from all this? It's almost as if you lived so many centuries yourself.
I can say at the end of the journey, I realized one thing, that it's possible to find a solution to every conflict, but sometimes it takes time. It takes years, decades, but it's possible to make a difference. It's been possible to sign agreement, to put a hand to different conflicts, to sign treaties against nuclear weapons, to break down different dictatorships. So it's possible, and it's still possible. Everything is a question of engagement and will. Of course, when you look at the big picture, you feel a little bit powerless, but around us, there are so many things to do, and we have the duty to commit, because we are privileged. We're not saying this every day, but we are privileged in North America, at least in the United States and in Canada. We live in the democratic countries. We have rights. We live in states of law. And when we have this privilege, we have the duty to commit. And my wish, I have only one wish. I wish that all the generation, my generation, the younger one, and the other one too, that will find the force and also the courage to put our intelligence, our talents and ideas in the service of the common, of the public common needs, and also the humanity.
Thank you so much. And that's what I find so inspiring about your books, is not only that you've shown that you can reach out as an individual to so many people who are in high power or who have done incredible things, but that we all have the capacity to do great things ourselves if we want to. And that's one of the most the most endearing parts of your repertoire. So I'm really grateful. So now we have time for some questions from the audience, if we have questions.
Yes. Thank you so much, Peter and Mélanie. We do have a few questions from our audience. First question for you, Melanie. How long do you typically spend with the subjects that you interview? How long does it take to actually get enough to create these great stories and to write and tell these stories?
It was a really big challenges because some witnesses gave me only 10 minutes of their time, but other half an hour. I went in a couple of places and I spent 3 hours with some of them. So it was difficult for me to be fair with all of them. So what I've decided to do is really to write the stories like they were. So I explained in each interview where I was, how long it was, and so in like this you can feel the interview. And when it's a short interview, of course, it's shorter in my book. And when it's long, when I spend more time, they have more space in my book. But at the end, it was a lot of work to write this book because I have to transcript every word of each of them, to edit, and also to format and everything in the book. And I took a year to write this book every day. I can say I start February 1st February 2015. And every day till September, the 30th of September, 2015, I wrote every day their stories and the book They Lived the Century.
What amazing discipline and dedication you gave to the project. My next question I actually have for Dr. Schulman. So how did you actually connect with Melanie on these projects?
Oh, that's something that Melanie would appreciate, because it's almost like how she approached the people in her book. I came across that paragraph that she read, which I found so moving, and I thought it would be perfect for this theme of resiliency that we're exploring in the ODU Summer Arts Series. So I wrote her out of the blue and said, "Look, we want to include you in this series. Would you be interested?" And then we struck up a friendship from that, just like in the book. So it was really serendipitous.
Awesome. Next question, we actually have a question from our Facebook viewers. Melanie, who do you see as an upcoming young leader, either in Canada or the US? Someone who has really fresh ideas for the future?
Well, it's difficult just to name one of them, and I don't know the name necessarily of all of them, because young leaders in which countries we have a different leader. But of course, we see a lot of Greta. Well, I forgot her last name. Greta. Everybody knows Greta. And in the States, there's different leaders. If we talk about the human rights, and also in Africa, there's a lot of young leaders, emerging young leaders. But yet I'm sorry, but I can just name one of them, and they are not so famous. It takes time to pass to the history, and that we know them.
Yes, exactly. And for my last question for you all today, Melanie, are you working on any new projects right now? Tell us what you have upcoming.
Well, right now I'm working on a library project in Congo with a friend of mine. We would like to give opportunity to the youth to have access to books, to culture. For us, it's really important, the culture, the language, and also the education. It's really at the base of everything. If we want to solve problems in this world, we have to educate young people. We have to educate the population everywhere in the world. And we have a big challenges because, of course, we are lucky here to have access to education. But in many countries, young girls, young men, they can, young boys, they can get access in many places, in many villages, in countries to education. And this is just a first step. It's just a start because it's difficult to put on place a project in undeveloped countries. But I think this is important for me now to be in the field to do something. But also, I like writing. So right now, I write a kind of book with the French language in Quebec about our history, because for a long time I've been interested about the world problems, but we have also problems here. And I think during the pandemic, it was time for me just to check my society, and I was stuck at home as everybody, and I've decided to write about my own environment, my own country, and what I like is really to create a kind of novel with the Québécoise, the characters, and also I use their language, and it would be completely different that I've done till now. But when the borders will be open, believe me, I'm gonna start to travel, and I'll be in the field in many countries.
Wonderful.
Yeah, we know solar energy and nuclear energy, but the world also knows Melanie's energy, which if we could put into a bottle would probably power lots of countries. So I'm sure you're going to do a lot of great things in the future.
Well, thank you so much, Peter and Mélanie, for bringing this powerful program to us today. We will close our program with a few remarks from Cullen Strachan.
I invite you to join us for the remainder of the summer series. To learn more and register for events, please visit oduartstix.com. That's oduartstix.com. And follow ODU Arts on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for updates. Thank you for joining us.